My name is Aaron Vale. There was a time when I believed love was a place you could rest your heart, a place where you could finally stop pretending to be strong. I grew up learning how to survive, not how to be loved. My family was present in name but absent in care, and from a young age, I learned to keep my feelings quiet. I didn't know then that silence would become both my shield and my prison. All I knew was that I wanted one person in this world who would see me, choose me, and stay. I wanted love to be the home I never had. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these real-life inspired stories reach hearts that are quietly fighting their own battles. I met Alara Moon on a rainy evening when the city looked tired of itself. She stood under the flickering light of a roadside cafe, brushing water from her hair with an impatient smile. Our eyes met for a second that felt longer than it should have, and something gentle moved inside me. I didn't know her name then. I just knew that for the first time in a long while, I felt warm in a place that had been cold for years. We started with small talks. "Do you always stare at strangers like that?" she asked, half smiling. "Only the ones who look like they belong in a story," I replied. She laughed, surprised by her own laughter, and that sound followed me home that night. It echoed in my head like a soft song. We exchanged numbers, and by the next morning, my phone carried her name. It felt strange how quickly someone could become important to you. Alara was light in human form. She spoke about dreams the way children talk about stars, like they were close enough to touch. She wanted to travel, to paint murals on forgotten walls, to live a life that felt bigger than fear. I, on the other hand, was used to shrinking myself to survive. I worked long hours at a small printing shop, saved money I barely enjoyed, and went home to a quiet room that reminded me of how alone I was. But with Alara, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. We began meeting after work. Sometimes we sat by the river, our feet hanging over the edge, watching the water move like it was going somewhere important. "Do you ever feel like you're standing still while life runs past you?" she asked once. "All the time," I said. "Then let's run together sometimes," she replied. And for a while we did. I told her about my family, how love in my home came with conditions, how praise was rare and disappointment was loud. She listened without trying to fix me. "That sounds lonely," she said softly. It was, I admitted. She reached for my hand that night, and in that simple gesture, I felt more understood than I ever had before. Love grew quietly between us. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. She would leave notes in my bag. I would walk her home even when I was tired. We shared stories, fears, silly dreams, and unspoken promises. I began to imagine a future where I wasn't alone anymore. I started to build dreams that included her, not realizing how fragile dreams can be when they rest on one person's heart. But love does not heal old wounds by itself. Sometimes it exposes them. I began to fear losing her the way I had lost so many things before. I became careful with my words, overthinking every moment. "Why do you always look like you're about to apologize?" Alara asked one evening. "Because I'm scared of messing this up," I said. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved, Aaron," she replied. But fear is not logical. It does not listen to reassurance. My family noticed the change in me. "You're distracted," my uncle said one night at dinner. "You think love will save you from reality?" I said nothing. I was used to silence. But their words planted doubt in my chest. I began to feel like I was choosing between the life I knew and the love I wanted. And slowly, quietly, the pressure started to bend me. Alara sensed the distance. "You're here, but you're not really here," she said one night as we walked. "I'm just tired," I lied. "From what?" "From everything." She stopped walking and faced me. "I don't want to lose you to a silence I can't reach," she said. I didn't know how to tell her that silence was the only language I had learned. The arguments were small at first. Missed calls, delayed replies, moments where I chose work, family demands, or exhaustion over her. "You don't fight for us," she said one day, tears in her eyes. "I am fighting," I replied. "Then why does it feel like I'm fighting alone?" That question stayed with me longer than any argument. Love slowly became heavy. Not because we didn't care, but because we were carrying different fears. She feared being unloved. I feared being abandoned. And when two people fear different things, they can begin to hurt each other without meaning to. The warmth we once shared started to cool, and I felt the familiar ache of something slipping away. The night she left was quiet. No shouting. No drama. Just tired voices and wet eyes. "I love you," she said, "but I don't feel chosen anymore." I wanted to say, I choose you every day. But the words stayed stuck in my throat, heavy with everything I never learned to say. She walked away, and for the first time in my life, love did not feel like home. It felt like another door closing. After Alara left, the city didn't change, but I did. The streets were the same, the traffic still impatient, the nights still full of noise. Yet everything felt muted, like someone had lowered the volume of my life. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of my bed the way I used to before she came into my world. The same walls, the same ceiling, the same silence. Only now, the silence wasn't familiar comfort. It was a reminder that love had been there. And then it wasn't. I told myself it would pass quickly. That heartbreak was just a storm, and storms always ended. But days turned into weeks, and the ache stayed. I would reach for my phone without thinking, ready to text her something small. Something silly I'd seen, something I knew would make her laugh. Then I'd remember I couldn't. I would open our chat and stare at the last message like it was a wound I kept touching to prove it was real. The last thing she wrote was simple. Please take care of yourself. It felt like someone leaving flowers at a grave. At work, I tried to pretend I was fine. I focused on designs, paper sizes, ink quality. Anything that could keep my mind busy. My boss, Mr. Dallin, noticed the change. He was an older man with calm eyes and a quiet way of speaking. The kind of person who didn't pressure you but still saw you clearly. You've been making mistakes, he said one afternoon, not harshly, just honestly. I'm sorry, I replied. He nodded. You don't need to apologize. You need to breathe. Breathing was the problem. My chest felt like it had a stone inside it. Even sleep wasn't rest. I'd dream of Alara's voice, wake up reaching for something that wasn't there, and spend the morning feeling like I'd lost her all over again. It was strange how the heart could replay pain as if it was brand new every day. It didn't matter that she was gone. My body still expected her to return. When my family learned she had left, they didn't comfort me. They acted like her departure was proof that love was a weakness. My uncle scoffed when he heard. So she finally left? You see, romance is for people who can afford foolishness. My aunt added, focus on survival, Aaron. Love doesn't pay bills. I wanted to tell them love wasn't just about bills. Love was about being seen, being held, being safe. But I had never won arguments in that house. Silence was always my answer, and they always mistook silence for agreement. A week later, the real betrayal came. Not dramatic, not loud, just cruel in its simplicity. My uncle had been helping me manage the small savings account I kept for my future. He had offered because he was older, more experienced, and I was too tired to fight him about it. I trusted him because he was family, because trust was something I had been trained to give even when it hurt me. One evening, I asked him for the account details. He didn't look up from the TV. Why? Because I need it, I said. I want to start something small. My own printing corner. Something better. He laughed, loud enough to sting. Start what? With what money? I froze. What do you mean? He finally turned to me, eyes cold. That money is gone. My throat went dry. Gone how? He shrugged like he was talking about misplaced keys. I used it. It was sitting there doing nothing. I invested it in something. What thing? I asked, voice trembling. Don't question me like that, he snapped. You're living under my roof. I felt something tear inside me. Not just anger, something deeper. A realization that I had been foolish to believe family would protect me when love failed. That was my life, I whispered. He waved his hand dismissively. Stop being dramatic. That night, I didn't cry immediately. I sat outside on the steps and stared at the dark street. I kept thinking about Alara's words. I don't feel chosen anymore. I kept thinking about how I had been trying so hard to be loyal to everyone that I ended up losing myself. Love left me. Family used me. And I was still expected to smile and pretend it was normal. Something in me hardened. Not into bitterness, but into clarity. The next morning, I packed a small bag. No announcement. No goodbye speech. I didn't have the strength for drama. When my aunt saw me near the door, she frowned. Where are you going? Somewhere I can breathe, I answered. You can't survive alone, she said sharply. I met her eyes for the first time in years, steady and calm. Then I'll learn, I replied and walked out. I rented a tiny room behind an old shop, a place with thin walls and a window that barely opened. It wasn't beautiful, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, the loneliness hit hard. There was no familiar voice, no laughter, no warmth. Just the hum of distant traffic and my own thoughts. For a moment, I almost went back. But then I remembered my uncle's laugh. I remembered Alara's tears. And I stayed. The rebuilding started ugly. I woke early, worked long shifts, ate cheap meals, and saved every coin like it was sacred. I avoided romance. Avoided friends. Avoided anything that could distract me from the one mission that mattered. Becoming someone who could not be broken so easily again. People think healing is soft. Sometimes it is. But sometimes healing looks like survival. It looks like grit. It looks like choosing to keep living when you don't feel alive. One evening, after a long day, I returned to my room and found an envelope at my door. My hands shook as I opened it. For one reckless second, I thought it might be from Alara. But it wasn't. It was from the landlord. My rent had increased. I stared at the paper until my eyes burned. I can't even afford to be poor, I muttered bitterly. And that's when I realized something. I needed more than patience. I needed a plan. At work, I started staying late, not because my boss demanded it, but because I wanted to learn everything. I studied the machines. I learned how to fix small errors, how to design faster, how to negotiate prices with suppliers. I watched how customers behaved, what they loved, what made them return. Mr. Dallin noticed again. "You're hungry," he said. "I have to be," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Then let me teach you what hunger should build." He began mentoring me quietly. Not with long speeches, but with small lessons. "Don't just print," he told me. "Create value. People pay for emotion, not paper." He showed me how to brand small businesses, how to make designs that looked expensive even when they weren't. And for the first time since Alara left, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. Then, like life wanted to test whether I had truly changed, Alara returned, without warning, into my world. I saw her at a street corner near the cafe where we first met. She was holding a folder, dressed in a simple outfit, her hair pulled back, her face tired in a way I hadn't seen before. She turned and our eyes met, and the world paused. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. "Aaron," she whispered. I swallowed. My heart didn't jump the way it used to. Instead, it tightened. "Alara," I replied quietly. She stepped closer. I didn't think I'd see you again." I gave a small nod. Neither did I. There was so much to say, but heartbreak doesn't make you brave. It makes you careful. "You look different," she said softly. "So do you," I answered. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't read. "Regret? Sadness? Fear?" "I heard you left your family," she said. "I had to," I replied. She looked down. "I'm sorry. I didn't know things were that heavy." I exhaled slowly. It was heavy, but I'm still here. She asked if we could talk. I hesitated, then agreed. We sat at a small outdoor table, the same kind of place where we once laughed like the world couldn't touch us. Alara's fingers trembled as she held her cup. "I left because I felt like you were slipping away," she said. "But I didn't want you to suffer." I stared at her. "I wasn't slipping away from you. I was drowning." Her eyes widened, tears forming. "Why didn't you tell me?" I gave a bitter half-smile. "Because I didn't know how." She cried quietly, and I felt that old instinct to comfort her rise in me. But I didn't move. Not because I didn't care, but because I had learned what it cost me to pour myself out until I was empty. "I missed you," she whispered. I nodded. "I missed you too." "Do you still love me?" she asked, voice breaking. That question landed like a stone. I looked at her for a long moment, then spoke carefully. "I love who we were," I said. "But I'm not the same man you left." Her face crumpled like she had been holding herself together with thread. "I didn't come to take from you," she said. "I came because I needed to see you. I needed to say I was wrong." I felt the ache again, but this time it didn't control me. "Sometimes," I said softly, "love isn't enough if both people aren't strong in the same season." She wiped her tears. "Can we try again?" I didn't answer immediately. My silence wasn't fear anymore. It was thought, because the truth was I wanted her. I wanted the warmth. I wanted the softness. But I also wanted the man I was becoming. And I couldn't go back to the version of me that begged for love and accepted crumbs from family. I had built something inside myself in silence, slowly, painfully, and I didn't know if love would nurture it or destroy it. Alara leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to return to who you were," she said. "I'm asking you to let me meet who you are now." Her words hit me differently than before. I studied her face and realized she wasn't just crying. She looked worn, like life had touched her too. Like maybe she also had a story she hadn't told. "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then her voice dropped. My world fell apart after I left you, she admitted. My mother got sick. I lost my job. The people I thought were friends disappeared. And I realized I had run from someone who would have stayed. I felt my chest tighten again. Not with anger, just sadness. And now? I asked. She swallowed. Now I'm trying to rebuild. And I don't want to rebuild without honesty. For the first time, I reached across the table and held her hand. Not like a man begging, but like a man choosing. Honesty, I said, is the only thing I can accept now. She nodded quickly. I'll give you that. I swear. I looked into her eyes and made a promise, not to her, but to myself. I would never abandon myself again to keep someone else. We didn't get back together that day. We didn't kiss. We didn't pretend everything was fixed. We simply agreed to talk again. To try slowly. To be careful. And when I walked back to my small room that night, the silence didn't feel as cold. It felt like a space where something new could grow, if it was meant to. The days after seeing Alara again felt different. Not lighter, just clearer. I woke up earlier, walked longer routes to work, and let the cool air settle my thoughts before the noise of the day began. I realized that rebuilding yourself is not about dramatic change. It's about quiet consistency. Showing up for your own life when no one is clapping for you. Choosing discipline when comfort is easier. I began to journal in the mornings, writing down small goals. Learn one new design trick, save one extra note of cash, speak one honest sentence instead of hiding behind silence. These were not heroic acts. They were tiny bricks. But together, they formed a foundation. Alara and I started meeting once a week. Not as lovers. As two people learning how to speak truth without fear. Sometimes we talked about light things, her attempts to paint again, my frustration with stubborn machines at the shop. Other times, the conversations went deep. I didn't know how to love someone who was hurting, she admitted one evening. I didn't know how to let someone see my hurt, I replied. We both smiled sadly at that. Healing wasn't a straight road. Some days felt hopeful. Other days felt like reopening old wounds. But this time, I didn't abandon myself to keep the connection alive. If I needed space, I said it. If something hurt, I named it. And strangely, honesty made everything softer. At work, Mr. Dallin surprised me with an offer. I'm opening a small extension of the shop, he said. I need someone I can trust to manage it. My heart jumped. Me? He nodded. You've been consistent. That's rare. I accepted with shaking hands. The pay wasn't huge, but the responsibility felt like a door opening. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me not out of obligation, but out of trust. I walked home that night smiling at the pavement like it had told me a joke. With a little extra income, I upgraded my tiny room. Just a small desk, a better chair, a plant by the window. It sounds simple, but for me, it was proof that I was building something real. I wasn't waiting for love to rescue me. I wasn't begging family for approval. I was slowly becoming a man who could stand on his own ground. The loneliness still visited, but it no longer owned me. I learned to sit with it, listen to it, and then let it pass. One evening, as I closed the shop, I saw my uncle standing across the street. He looked older than I remembered, his confidence dulled by time. For a second, I considered walking away. But he crossed the road and called my name. Aaron, he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I didn't respond immediately. I heard you're doing well, he continued. I came to talk. I folded my arms. Talk about what? He sighed. About what I did. I was wrong. The words felt small compared to the damage, but they were still words I had waited years to hear. We stood there in silence for a moment. I used your money because I thought I deserved more, he said. I was bitter. I was careless with your future. I met his eyes. You weren't careless. You were selfish. He flinched, but he didn't argue. I can't fix the past, he said, but I want to make it right. I shook my head slowly. Making it right isn't giving back money you don't have. It's respecting that I'm not something to be used. He nodded, shame heavy on his face. I don't know if I can forgive you, I added. But I won't let what you did define me. He left without asking for forgiveness. And that oddly gave me peace. I realized closure doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like walking away without carrying hate. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. Alara noticed the change in me too. You're standing differently, she said once. I smiled. I finally feel like I'm standing at all. She laughed softly. Then her face turned serious. I'm proud of you, she said. Those words meant more than I expected. Not because I needed her validation, but because they came from a place of seeing me, not saving me. We had the conversation that had been waiting for us. Where do we go from here? She asked. I thought carefully. I care about you, but I'm building a life that doesn't collapse when love shakes. If we try again, it has to be with two whole people, not two broken ones holding each other up. She nodded slowly. I don't want to be your escape, she said. I want to be your partner. That word, partner, felt different from the love we had before. Stronger. More honest. We decided to try again, gently. No rushing. No pretending the past didn't hurt. We rebuilt trust the way you rebuild after a fire, slowly, carefully, with attention to every weak spot. There were days we stumbled. Days old fears whispered to us. But this time, we talked through them instead of letting silence swallow everything. Months passed. The extension shop began to grow. I trained 2 younger workers, teaching them what Mr. Dallin had taught me. That people don't just pay for paper, they pay for care. I started saving again, not out of fear, but out of vision. I dreamed of opening my own place someday. Not to prove anything to anyone, but because I finally believed I was capable of building something that would last. One afternoon, I stood by the river where Alara and I once talked about running together. The water still moved the same way, steady and patient. She stood beside me, her shoulder lightly touching mine. Do you still feel like life is running past you? She asked. I shook my head. No. I feel like I'm finally moving with it. She smiled, resting her head briefly against my arm. In that small moment, I understood something important. Love didn't come to replace my life. It came to walk alongside it. My family didn't suddenly become warm. Some relationships remained distant. And that was okay. I stopped trying to pull affection from places that only offered control. I built chosen family instead, quiet mentors, honest friends, and a partner who was learning to stand beside me, not in front of me or behind me. The need to be approved of faded. In its place grew a steady sense of self-respect. I often think about the version of me who believed love alone could heal him. I don't judge him. He was doing the best he could with what he knew. But I am grateful I became someone who learned that self-worth is built in silence, in small daily choices, in the courage to leave what hurts you, even when it's familiar. If you are reading this and you feel abandoned by love, unseen by family, tired of being strong for everyone else, know this: rebuilding yourself doesn't make you cold. It makes you rooted. It teaches you how to love without losing yourself. You are not broken for wanting connection. You are powerful for learning how to stand when it falls apart. I am still building, still learning, still choosing honesty over hiding. Love didn't save me. Family didn't rescue me. I built myself in silence. And in that quiet work, I found a strength that no one can take from me. And if my story reached you in a quiet moment of your own life, when your heart feels heavy and your future feels uncertain, please remember this. Your healing does not need permission from the people who hurt you. Your growth does not need applause. Sometimes the bravest thing you will ever do is continue. Thank you for staying with this story till the end. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these real-life inspired stories reach people who are quietly fighting their own battles, and reminds someone out there that they are not alone.